Welcome to this week's episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. Today we're talking about an essential oil that is gifted from a plant that you may have in your garden. You may have even eaten it, but you may not have heard of it as an essential oil. That's right, we're talking about Perilla, which is known in Japan as Shiso, in Mandarin as Zitsu, and some people even call it beefsteak plant. But it is a fascinating essential oil, and we're so excited to share some insights on how you can work with this on all different levels today. Liz, one thing I find really interesting about this is reading other people's descriptions on what this oil actually smells like.
Well, so I came to the conclusion yesterday. Well, I've been researching it for some weeks, to be honest, because when it came up that we were going to do it, I was like, oh, it's been sitting on my shelf for such a long time. I better really try and work out what I'm going to say about it. And this not might not be a 5 minute thing. And yeah, certainly describing the smell is odd. But also, I found that I had like a little sort of mantra that my dad always used to say when I was doing the research, and that was, what a load of rubbish. A load of people have written, because there are two perilla oils. There's a perilla seed oil and a perilla essential oil. And perilla seed oil is really sort of popular in its own right because it's incredibly good for digestive problems. It's a very powerful antioxidant, and that is because it contains rosmarinic acid, which is one of the things that makes, for example, Melissa tea and Melissa sort of extracts magical, because it does so many good things in terms of antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and all of that. However, it's a big molecule and it can't pass through distillation. So we'll often see it saying, oh, it's in the essential oil. No, that can't be true. I've spent many a painful hour establishing that when I was doing my Melissa book. So let's start with that. So the first thing to say is they are different things. Perilla essential oil, I don't know how you could really describe it, to be honest. It's a very, very unusual smell. I think, well, we should perhaps say that you, it's, as you say, it's sometimes known as a basil. It isn't a basil, but I can see how it got there because it kind of does have that sort of pungency at the back of it, but it's quite powdery in its fragrance. It is really mouth-watering when you smell it, and I wouldn't have smelt it until I saw read the GCMS, but when you know it's in there, you kind of do get the limonene coming through. So it is really refreshing. It has this kind of sense of being very of spaciousness when you smell it, and yeah, it's something that you can't really get from reading about it. It's one that you do have to experience to understand. Okay, I really see why Chinese medicine is so excited about this plant. So before I go on, tell me what you know.
Yeah, I guess, the description of the aroma, it is hard. I guess it smells like, for want of a better term, perilla, but people have
Uh-huh.
described mint smells, tarragon combination, and even, that it just smells mysterious. And that's why often it is served with sashimi in places like Japan, because it kind of adds to that flavor and is used as a beautiful garnish in that way. Some of the reading that I was doing on this one to try and get the chemistry is that there can be different chemotypes and it can be hard to pin down. So I was kind of struggling to get the dominant chemistry. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to share about that. But overall, I feel that it seems to be quite a calming oil for the body and the mind, and would be really great for, as we kind of expand on this conversation, get into its more holistic efforts. I think its chemistry lends it to helping to be a more of a calming and centering and clarifying oil rather than any of the other kind of aspects. Which, when we think about small plant leaf oils, they normally do have that impact on the mind, where they somehow will focus the mind, and we'll kind of unpack that as we talk today about how perilla might, as opposed to something like a peppermint or a rosemary or a basil or a lemongrass.
Yeah, I think that you really helped me actually just when you were talking about how it kind of smells Japanese. I think I think that's exactly true. If you were to try and imagine like a beautiful Zen garden, and you're going over a bridge to the temple, and you know there's like that background scent of the woods that have been making the temple, but you suspect, I'm guessing there'll be some kind of incense because they really love their incenses. It does kind of have the nature of smelling what you would imagine a Japanese incense would smell like. It kind of has that ethereal smokiness. And I agree, mysterious is a really great description in that I can smell that there's something just different and hidden that I don't have in my vocabulary, really. But also, I think you really touched on something that was interesting in my mind there when you were talking about how it was Japanese. And I said, I would always imagine a bridge because that's very much part of the Japanese sort of architecture of a garden, isn't it? And when you really drill down into what the Chinese medicine is about this and about how it's used, we perhaps have said it as if it's obvious and it's not. It's really a popular ingredient in Japanese cooking. And so it's used in like as a garnish to bring out scent, bring out the flavors, but actually that's what it's used for, as a bridge. So to bring the flavors together, but also to really help the digestive process. And I think, I mean, I've never seen this written, but I think it would be a really useful oil to use for somebody who has like irritable bowel syndrome or something like that, particularly who is really affected by the emotions. So I mean, the emotions, let's just put that into a scientific framework for a second. One of the reasons why it appears that irritable bowel syndrome can be so affected by stress is because serotonin is made in the gut. And although it's like a neurotransmitter, we kind of imagined that it would be in the head, but 90% of the serotonin in your body is in the gut. So if serotonin drops, if you are shocked, for example, if you are stressed, serotonin drops. There's no the sort of anything to modulate the mood, but serotonin has around about 300 different functions in the body, which is just astonishing if you think about it. But importantly, it's to do with the mobility of the gut. And so if there is a low level of serotonin, the gut will spasm, or it will say, just get it out really fast. So you evacuate your bowels very fast, you have diarrhea, or it goes, no, hold on to that. And so you have this like switching between diarrhea, constipation, and that's irritable bowel. It's irritable because you're irritable. And so being able to find something that makes these bridges, we can say between like the mind and the body from that particular perspective, we can really anchor it in neurotransmitters, but we could also say between the emotion, like the mental etheric body, the emotional etheric body, the physical etheric body. If you imagine there's like a bridge between those, and that there was an oil that would be able to harmonize those, this is definitely it. So I think that's really interesting.
So that's really exciting because, you know, throughout the episodes that we've looked at, there are so many different digestive oils: peppermint, ginger, fennel, caraway. We could kind of list them forever. But Perilla, I guess, could step in as a digestive oil for those people where it's not just the physicality, because we all have had experiences where we've had some kind of emotional experience going on and our belly just doesn't feel right. And so, yeah, I love this idea that Perilla would be the one we'd reach for in that case to help kind of settle the emotions and thus the gut.
Yeah, and I think particularly that the gut is what it's good at. It's a very, very digestive oil. It's very good. So if you like it's carminative, so there's like, if there's bloating or there's flatulence or there's indigestion, once you've thought about it from that sort of mental framework, we can say, okay, yeah, I understand how all those things fit together. Heartburn, yeah, I can see how that might happen when we're very angry. And then when you put like the visualization of a bridge between the etheric bodies, a bridge between the nervous system, it comes really interesting. So one of the things that I've really been experimenting with while we've been doing these different videos is getting a chat GPT involved in analysing data. So I don't use the normal one that like is just free. I pay for a better model. And one of the things that the pieces of research that it came up with, it said, well, there's ever such a lot of research about how inhalation of essential oils directly affects the vagus nerve. And I was like, is there? That has passed me by completely. So tell me about that. And yeah, it was able to bring out, albeit a lot of them were lavender studies, but how the inhalation of being able to calm down the parasympathetic nervous system was having a direct effect on things like heartbeats variations. And of course, yeah, that makes complete sense, doesn't it? You know, you can you need a scientist sometimes to put it into a different framework to be able to see it. And I was like, yeah, that really makes sense to me. But also, if you frame it in a different way and you say, okay, well, this is a Chinese medicine or a Japanese medicine. I really like that they call it Shiso essential oil. I think that kind of is prettier than Perilla. Shiso essential oil. Then application of it, if they were going to use it as an oil, would be to apply it over meridians, of course. So then if we look at it from the framework of like different acupressure points, how they would harmonize the system. So for example, it's used on the stomach meridian, obviously, but interestingly, it's often used on the spleen meridian, and that's because the spleen ruminates. It's to do with worry, and so that settles all that down as well. So it was really fascinating to like observe it from a different framework.
Very much so. Now, you mentioned before about limonene being, is that one of the key chemical constituents we normally find in Perilla?
So, well, I'm only going off the GCMS of the oil that I have, which I know people are always saying, "Oh, where can I get this from?" And I think that this will be probably one that you would like to try if you're perhaps got a bit more advanced skills. I got mine from Oshadi, and so the GCMS there for their one that they've got at the moment is 10% limonene or limonene. The key constituent is an aldehyde, Perilla aldehyde. So clearly it doesn't get found anywhere else. And actually, aldehydes are really good if you know it from like functional medicine as antimicrobials. It's often used, for example, antimicrobial herb to give to like cattle to keep their digestive systems healthy. Also, it's like researched as an essential oil, as an additive for food, because it obviously stops molds growing and things like that. And aldehydes are really good at having that antimicrobial aspect. And according to ChatGPT, and I didn't like follow this thread to test it, but it looks right to me. 54% aldehydes is really high. It says it doesn't think there's another oil that has such a high aldehydic content. So that's really interesting. Limonene, of course, has loads and loads of good uplifting properties, antimicrobial properties. But one thing that we should be aware of, which I didn't see written anywhere, is if something has limonene in it, in the same way as it has delta-3 carine or linalool, those deteriorate very quickly. So if you were making a preparation with Perilla, because I can really see how this is something that would really sell very well if you were making like a preparation for, you couldn't say it was for IBS, but if you're talking to somebody on a one-to-one like consultation, something to settle your belly, that you don't have the stress response. I can see how it would be a really great thing to use. But if you've got something that's high in limonene, and I would say 10% is significant enough to be worried about, you're not going to want something to make something that you are not going to use immediately without putting an antioxidant into it. So you would want some kind of preservative in it because the 10% is high.
Are there any other kind of physical uses that you would kind of throw in, or do you think digestion would be the main one for
I think anything, I think anything to do with stress related. It's not going to be one that you say, oh, I use it for eczema because it heals the skin. I use it for eczema because of the stress aspect. Yeah. And likewise, it's definitely not something that you would want to put in skincare. It's too odd a smell. But I think, anything where you think somebody really could do with the stress angle of this addressing, I think really helpful. Yeah. Any kind of digestion, but also just things to do with nervous system generally, emotions generally.
Yeah, something about this oil kind of really talks to me about the full moon time. A lot of people get affected by the full moon. They get overwhelmed and kind of scattered around the full moon. I think this would be a beautiful essential oil even to diffuse or anoint, on the body somewhere a little bit, just to kind of help you to gather your thoughts and to kind of help you digest what's happening. Now, would I say only the full moon? No, I'd say any of those times when you feel like you're kind of feeling disorientated, not necessarily because you're dizzy, but just, there's a lot happening in the world. It could be an overload. Some people get overwhelmed by the amount of negative news or the amount of warring countries that are happening at the moment. That can really, they take that on. And I guess for empaths and that type of thing that are feeling a little bit struggling to see through the clouds of chaos, I think this would be a really nice one just to kind of bring you back into center and to help you bit by bit digest the mysterious, if that makes sense.
I think that a key word here is assimilation. Assimilation in terms of digestion, but also assimilation of information. And in Japan, they use it as a way to protect your etheric boundaries. Not their words, that's my word. But to be able to shut off the external world, if you like. It's very good for if somebody has had some kind of physical attack, any kind of emotional attack, mental attack, to kind of just go, oh no, don't let that come in and like wreck me, from there. Also extremely good for sadness, grief, melancholy, disappointment. It kind of has this lifting effect. But I know it sounds very strange, and it's probably because I'm doing so much on the aura that I'm talking this way, but it does feel like it's kind of just leaving this physical body and going out through the layers somehow, and just leaving and going, not mine.
It's very cleansing oil indeed, I believe. And what I found interesting when I was reading other people's opinions about it as well is some were saying, it's more for the mind, others were saying it's more for the heart. What's your opinion on that? Or could it be both?
For the heart. Yeah, I can feel it. I can feel it on the lungs. I can feel it having an effect on the lungs. I don't feel that it's necessarily like a physical effect from the point of view of like, I would choose eucalyptus if I got a cough, or frankincense if I wanted to breathe better. But it kind of just has that sigh, that kind of like that note of like, it feels like that. So yeah, that would be heart medicine. Yeah. So
yeah.
I think it's more stomach for me. Yeah.
Okay. I guess we're talking about that assimilation and helping to find clarity when there is that overwhelm. I guess there's two types of overwhelm. There's that mental overwhelm, but there's also emotional overwhelm. Do you think it would work for both, or?
Yeah, I do. And you don't one of my pet hates there of making that into a noun. Like I don't feel overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed. And it doesn't matter if it's my mind or my emotions. I just feel overwhelmed. Do you know what I mean? So therefore, yeah, both and all.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. So then which chakra would you be looking at for this one, do you think?
Well, so that's very interesting. I think that mm, I think when we're talking about clarity is both a mind thing but also a throat thing. Quite often you want to say things, but you've got to think really clearly about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. So I think both of those things could be true. But I think given what we've said about the serotonin and how it's in the gut and how it's all about metabolism and assimilation, that seems like solar plexus to me.
I think I tend to lean towards the third eye. I don't know if I would work with it for the throat chakra. I think, you almost need to get your thoughts in order before you actually speak. And I think that would focus mainly on that. And maybe pairing it with something like a eucalyptus or a cypress might actually then allow the words to flow. But I think I would use it primarily for getting that clarity first of all in that instance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Did I not say it? I feel like I might have like abbreviated that in my head because in one of our other videos, I sort of said I think there's like a brow chakra and a third eye chakra, and I think again here I would say thoughts rather
Yeah.
than like being able to visualize. Like no, that's not like divination and stuff. So yeah, brow chakra. I definitely
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of feel it's still because of its ability to kind of make sense of the fog or the disillusionment. I feel it does have a bit of a. It would work really well with other lunar wheels, and so I'd kind of pitch it being governed by the moon, in my opinion.
Are you looking for a rulership, an astrological
Yeah.
rulership? Is that what you're
Yeah.
asking me? No, I've decided I don't agree with that. I think Ceres, the
Oh,
asteroid
okay.
series. So talk to me about the asteroid series and let me check. Let me mirror it back to me.
Yeah. So first of all, in astrology, beyond just our traditional planets and the moon, as we've started to evolve, we've started to realize there are other significant astrological bodies in the sky. The major ones are in what's called the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, so actually quite close to Earth. And within those asteroids, there is actually what is now classified as a dwarf planet. She has her own kind of, she's kind of cleared the space around her, and she is Ceres. Now, that's the Roman name of the Greek Demeter, who was the goddess of basically, it was her job to make sure that the grains grew, there are fruits on the trees and flowers on the plants. So she was very much about abundance on Earth as well. So in astrology, she's very much about our ability to nurture and be nurtured and how we like to be nurtured, what makes us feel nurtured, and also how we nurture other people because often we do what we want.
Yeah. So she's also like from a medical point of view to do with digestion and to
Mm.
do it with our ability to assimilate, but also if you are looking at it from a point of view of being a Melissa priestess, can't find any just to talk to her at the moment. But she would say, well, Demeter is a double goddess. She's Demeter core, so therefore she's Persephone as well. And so this idea of grief and the underworld really plays out to me. So I think that I would put her under that rulership. Yeah.
So it was interesting. You made a passing comment before. Anyone who's interested in kind of expanding their essential oil knowledge, you believe this would be a good one for them. We often ask, is this for everyone? Probably not for everyone. I think it's a really interesting smelling essential oil that people might like playing with, although it is hard to blend with often for it. Like you said, you wouldn't put it in skincare because of its aroma. But I think definitely people that are affected by their emotions physically, this would be a good oil to work with.
Yeah, I actually would put it quite high up there as like once you've got past the 20 obvious ones and you wanted to have something more unusual in your set, I think that this one would be a really good one to go after because I think that in terms of aromatherapy, in terms of being able to differentiate yourself from like the person that uses essential oils as sticking plasters, you really do have to start to understand the holistic nature of mind, body, spirit medicine. So anything that can harmonize those and bridge between those is really going to be very useful. And this one definitely does. And, you know, that's what it's been said all the way through its history. It's a bridge. It's between the emotional body, it's between digestion. So that's something that's got real day. Like, that's not a vague association. That is exactly what IBS is. So you could, if you were doing something like a case history, you would be able to write really interesting things and observe really interesting things from it. So I do think it is one to do. What I will say is it's not cheap. I mean, this is my tiny bottle. And I think if you wanted like a 5 ml bottle, you're probably looking about 50 quid. So it's not cheap, but you can get small amounts, and I think it's a really interesting one to work with. And like I say, you won't find. I'm probably doing Helena's service, but I don't think Helen Nagle-Smith's ever written anything about it. So in which case, there's very little, there's hardly anything written about it at all. So anything that you did do, if you went and looked in TCM, if you looked in Japanese medicine, do the work. There's interesting things that you can learn from it.
Very much so. Just to reiterate, I'm not sure if I was clear before. I think anyone whose emotions impact their physical well-being in any way, this would be a good oil for. Empaths. Do you think it would be good for empaths?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, yeah.
Agree.
And so actually, just to touch on, you said you would use it during the full moon, and I absolutely see why you would use that. Or work with it at that time. But I also think that there's other times that it could be useful. For example, from a like, well, actually, let's just say this. So in Japan, they use it for being able to bring together the movements of the cycles. So that's really helpful if you've got like seasonal affective disorder. But also, I think it is really kind of an anchor to the dark of the moon. So you would say, right, okay, that's the time when you do intention setting, and that's exactly right. But also, it's the time when, if you would like to overlay it with menstruation, that's the time of the bleeding. It's the time when the worries come, when you know you are most open to psychic stuff, but also you're at your most vulnerable, and then the moon affects you. And so I think that is quite an interesting thing as well. But myself now, my astrology, you just had your birthday this week, by the way, happy birthday. Mine's coming up. I'm in 12th house, and 12th house is the time of the thoughts, the darkness, the sort of secret hidden times of your life. And that can be a really rich time of, really, it's exciting that your birthday is coming up, but also, you know, that's a rich time of exploration of your psyche. But also, if something bad goes wrong in that time, my God, you feel it. And I think from that point of view, it's really interesting sort of 12th house stuff. I talked about how I feel it's ruled by the dwarf planet. You're quite right for putting me right on that, about Ceres. But I also think there's quite a Piscean energy to it. So one of the things that I always think about Pisces people is they're so in the water, so in the energy, so in the sort of emotional soup. Sometimes it's hard to be able to go, that's mine, that's yours. You know, it gets lost. It's part of their sort of constitutional makeup. So I think if you were a Piscean, or if you were somebody who was an empath, or a healer who's not very good at putting up boundaries, then yeah, any of those things that kind of goes, this is me, this is not me, times useful.
Yeah, so as you're speaking there, I was like, well, okay, it could possibly be a Neptunian oil, because Neptune being the natural ruler of Pisces as well. And, you know, Neptune's all about that that kind of aesthetic beauty and that kind of non-structured form. So it could also help us to kind of counteract too much Neptunian energy, or, you know,
Yeah, so
So
that's what I was going to say. It's
yeah,
almost like the antithesis of Neptune. So where like Neptune's about delusion, it's about mental fog. Actually, and so you're quite right. This would be the medicine against that, rather than I want to build more Neptune into me. It's not like dreams, lucid dreaming, all of that stuff that you would think like classically think with a like Neptunian medicine. It'd be like the antidote to it.
yeah. And then for anyone who's looking at their astrological chart, if they are a Pisces or have a lot of different planets in Pisces or a lot of water signs, then this could be a good oil for you to kind of bring that kind of clarity in the emotional overwhelm that may happen, or the anytime you're feeling a bit, if you're drowning, Perilla might be your life jacket.
Yeah, I like it. I really, really think it's a lovely oil. And do you know, I genuinely don't know why I bought it. I can't remember at all what provoked me to buy it. There must have been something, some piece of research somewhere, and potentially it was in the Melissa book, but it's lost in the annals of my foggy brain. But that hasn't come back to me. But I'm really happy to rediscover it. I think it's a really useful rediscovery.
Well, we hope that everyone tuning in today has enjoyed discovering it as well. We'd love to know, have you experienced this essential oil? And if not, have we kind of whet your appetite for another one you have to go out and buy now? Sorry about that. But please remember that other people may also benefit from this episode. So make sure that you share it with someone who you think might be a bit of an empath, might be a little bit kind of overwhelmed by their emotions sometimes. This could be a bit of a subtle hint. Go, yeah, have some Perilla. So share the episode, like it, and make sure that you subscribe to us as well, because that allows our work to get out to more people and we can spread the gifts of Mother Nature. We'll be back next week when we dive into another gift from Mother Nature. What will it be? We've got a few to go before we hit that big 100. You have to be around to find out. Until then, take care and blessed be.
Bye bye.